Hi, I'm Jana, and welcome to the Crafty Corner. Today I'm here to tell you about the new challenge at the Funkie Junkie Blog, and I will be sure to leave a link down in the description. This challenge is running from June 30th through July 13th, and our crafty theme this time is Time Shows Us What Really Matters. For this project, we're going to be looking at the use of images of clocks, clock faces, and clock hands. Include some sort of timepiece in your make. We look forward to seeing all of your creative ideas over at the Funkie Junkie blog. For my project, I decided to do a journal layout, and I'm going to show you a couple of the embellishments that I did for the journal spread. I'm going to be playing with texture paste and a bit of grit paste. Go ahead and pause to find out exactly what supplies I'm going to be using for these techniques. All right, let's head over to the Crafty Corner. Today, we're going to be making some embellishments for a journal layout. I have some die cut pieces out of chipboard. This die set over here is from an old retired Tim Holtz big set, Moon and Stars, and this is from a newer Tim Holtz Sizzix set, big die, called Timekeeper. To embellish these, I'm going to be using different mediums. I'm going to be using some opaque grit paste and some clear rock candy. To start with, I'm going to be painting the moon a solid color of distress paint, and I'm going to be using Speckled Egg as my base color. So we're going to give this a good layer of Speckled Egg, and then we'll set that aside to dry. Speckled Egg is definitely one of my favorite distress colors. It's such a lovely neutral blue. It's almost got tinges of gray to it, which I love using on a moon. So I'm just quickly laying down a coat of distress paint on the moon, and then we'll switch embellishments. Okay, so we'll set this one aside to dry for now. And the next piece that I'm going to be working on is the large clock face. For this, I don't need to put down any paint first. I'm just going to start adding some grit paste over the top. So with the grit paste, I'm just going to scoop out a bit, and I'm going to place it on the side on my media mat. The main point for the grit paste is to build up some texture on the clock face, and then later I will paint this once the grit paste is dry. So I just want to smear on grit paste here and there on the clock face to build up some fun texture. I'm trying to press the grit paste on using the flat part of the palette knife. For the clock face, I'm going to be going for a more of a grungy look, so the more texture we have on here, the better it's going to look later. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to clean out a bit of the grit paste that got caught between some of the Roman numerals and smush that onto other parts of the design. All right, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to take this and set it aside for now. Now we're going to go back and look at the moon again. The distress paint on here is already dry, so we can add the next layer to the moon. The next layer on the moon that I'm going to be adding is going to be some clear rock candy distress crackle paint. I absolutely love the glassy finish this gives over distress paint. It looks fantastic. So I'll grab a paintbrush and scoop some of the crackle paste out. Okay, and for this part, I want to give a fairly thick coating, almost like frosting, over the moon. The more of the crackle paint we have on here, the deeper the crackles will be once this dries. If we don't put enough on, we'll get little crackles. That can look nice, but for this moon, I want it to sparkle and have some fairly deep cracks running along it. For the crackle paste to dry, if I'm putting it on fairly thick like frosting, I find that it takes up to 40 minutes to dry. This is also one medium that I am not remotely tempted to attempt to force it to dry early with the heat gun. If you try to do that, the crackle paint will bubble and the crackle doesn't form as nicely as if you just let it air dry. Okay, we've got some good coverage on this, and again, I will set this aside to dry. While the moon is drying, we're going to add some distress paint to these chipboard stars. For these, I'm going to be using some picket fence to give them some color, and then I will add the crackle paint over the top. So again, just giving these a thin layer, and I'll set it aside to dry once I have some paint on this. Okay, that's all right. And next I will add some of the clear rock candy crackle over the top of this. And again, I'm going to be spreading the crackle paint over the top with about the same consistency as frosting. Okay, that one looks good. We'll set that down to dry. Once the crackle paste is dry, we're going to highlight some of the crackles by smushing some vintage photo over the top to really bring out the crackle lines. Okay, and now we just need to wait for our pieces to dry. So I'm going to wait about 40 minutes and then I'll come back and see how these have progressed. Okay, let's check on our stars and moon. Okay, that looks pretty awesome with the Clear Rock Candy Distress Crackle paint. I love that effect, but we're going to get these little crackles to pop even more. And to do that, I'm going to be using some vintage photo distress ink and some dome foam. We're going to take our blending tool and we're going to smush some ink into the cracks. And that is going to help give those little crackles some more definition. So we cover the whole thing, and then with our fingers, we're just going to rub the ink in. And that's going to give us an awesome vintagey look on these stars. And if we want a little bit more definition, we just go back and add a little bit more ink. And again, rub it around with our fingers. Yes, that is looking really good. We can see the definition of all the little crackly bits. So that is good. Well, let's grunge up our other pieces. So I'm just going to continue to add distress ink to the stars and smush it around with my fingers. The dome foam is really good for this because it allows the ink to get pushed right into the little cracks. Oh, I just love the vintagey look of these now. It's so cool. Okay, let's move on to our last piece. Time to add some ink to the moon. Underneath the Clear Rock Candy, we have Speckled Egg. Yeah, that is looking pretty good. And this is going for the vintagey vibe that I wanted to get with these pieces. That is so cool. Definitely one of my favorite mediums to work with. Okay, now that those are all done, let's turn our attention back to the clock face. The grit paste on here is all nice and dry. First, before we add any distress crayon, we're going to add a quick layer of distress paint. I'm going to be adding some tarnished brass to this as a base coat. So I'm just going to squirt a bit of the tarnished brass on my media mat, and then we're just going to quickly paint it on. Now the texture paste, we're going to start getting a little bit of an eroded metal look with the texture, but we're not going to really see that until we start adding some distress crayon. But for now, we're just going to paint. And at this point, I'm going to put this on fast forward. And here we are. We have just painted our clock face with tarnished brass distress paint. So we're going to let this dry a little bit, and then we'll come back in and grunge this up a bit more with some distress crayon. I'm going to leave this to dry for about 20 minutes and then we'll start the next step. Okay, let's add some texture to this clock face. To do that, I'm going to be using distress crayon in Walnut stain, ground espresso, and tarnished brass. To start with, I'm going to put down some of the tarnished brass. I'm just going to add a couple of little highlights in places, and then I'm going to come back with some of the walnut stain. So the grit paste is going to cause the crayon to drag a bit, and that's going to help me build up some texture on the clock face. Now I'm going to be turning the clock face, and I'm going to be alternating between ground espresso and walnut stain and continue to dab on the distress crayon all around the clock face until I have good grungy layers. Okay, now I'm just going to smush that color around a little bit with my fingers. Now I'm going to continue adding layers of distress crayon to build up some more texture over the grip paste. I'm going to be continuing to alternate between colors, and I will use the tarnished brass crayon as well to add in a couple of highlights. Okay. I am liking that. That looks nice and grungy. So there we go. Those are our embellishments today, playing with texture. I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about texture paste and grit and how we can make things grungy. And these I'm going to be using in a full journal layout. If you'd like to know more, go ahead and check out my blog. I'll link it down in the description. I hope that you'll join us over at the Funkie Junkie for Time Shows Us What Really Matters. If you'd like to join our challenge, there's going to be a link down in the description box. I can't wait to see all of your wonderful projects. So, until next time, happy crafting!